Brilliant from Eddie Howe and brilliant from that back three / back five. It was like, you blink, I'll change.
Yeah.
I'll change, you blink. And it was great from the two managers, and Eddie Howe comes out on top.
Newcastle United took a huge step towards qualifying for the Champions League and put a massive dent in Chelsea's hopes of reaching the competition with a 2-0 win over the Blues at St James's Park on Sunday afternoon. A huge victory for the Toon Army, and it's now in their hands to finish second in the Premier League, which they will do if they win both of their remaining games against Arsenal and Everton. I'm Will Pugh, and we're here in the Tactics Exposed studio. And of course, SunSport's tactical guru, Dean Scoggins, joins us once again. Dino, wonderful to see you. It was a bit of a toss-up this week. It was Liverpool or Arsenal, Newcastle, Chelsea, and despite my best efforts, West Ham's win at Old Trafford was not considered. But we've done a lot of Arsenal in recent times. Newcastle have probably, to be fair to them, been going under the radar a little bit, not perhaps getting the coverage that maybe their performances deserve. They've really kicked on after the Carabao Cup win, and it looks like they're about to cap an amazing season, starting with this huge win against Chelsea.
Yeah, I mean, let's avoid the end of season friendlies, shall we, at Old Trafford and the Tottenham Stadium and even at Anfield, let's be honest. But yeah, an Eddie Howe masterclass this was, and I was really, really delighted to be able to go through it in fine detail, because he is a proper tactician, and for a tactical nerd like me, this was exactly what I wanted to watch. And look, it was a proper game, and it swung back and forth even after the red card. So I'll go through the 5 things straight away. The first one, Sandro Tonali, quicksand, straight out of the blocks, that early goal. We'll look and see how they did that. Number 2, Botman and Rob Him. Now this is, no, I thought you'd like that one. And it's quite a mouthful to say as well. But yeah, we'll go through that of how Eddie Howe changed his formation to combat Chelsea, which was outstanding, and how he used the centre-backs. Number 3 was break the box. We talk about Chelsea's box midfield a lot. We have done in previous shows, and what Newcastle did to change that and combat that. And then change that to number 4. The second half, even with 10 men, Chelsea got better and better, and it was like a game of chess where one move from Maresca was countered by another move from Howe. So we'll go through that as well. And number 5, we saw the stroppy hands thrown around Cole Palmer as everything he did was batted away by Newcastle.
Absolutely. Right, straight into it then. Dino, we'll start with that one, quicksand. Talk to me.
Yeah, so it was just, you'd expect it, right? If you were Chelsea in the dressing room before, you'd be thinking they're going to come after us early. Like, Geordie Nation, full sing, sunshine, shirts off, enormous atmosphere, must-win game. You've got to think they're coming after you from the start. But what was amazing was, all right, Anthony Gordon has this run up the left-hand side, puts them under pressure with Caicedo up there. And we've got a grab to show of where Sandro Tonali is. Do you remember in previous episodes we've talked about how Newcastle aren't frightened to make the pitch big?
Yep.
And their midfield will go back and forth, because if they get hit by a long ball, their back 4 will head it and then they'll win the second ball. Same if they hit a long ball forward, they compete with it high up and then they bustle around and try and win the ball back high up the field, like in the cup final, and they did that to Liverpool really successfully. Sandro Tonali is about 50 yards away from where Anthony Gordon is when the ball breaks down.
Yeah.
And then he gets there to nick it off. I think it's Lavia in possession. It might have been Caicedo. And then around the edge of the box, him and Bruno Guimarães are right on top of it. And it's a full-on press. Eddie Howe actually said afterwards they didn't practice the two of them getting in the box.
Right.
But when the ball goes out wide again, and it's, you know, you'd expect Isak or Barnes or Gordon to be in the area. It's those two midfielders who go driving into the centre-forward position. And Bruno Guimarães makes this amazing run to the front post, which means he's going for goal. He's not thinking about his mate behind. He's going for goal. But he goes to the front post in a great run, which means that it takes the two defenders to the near post. Yeah. And then Sandro Tonali, again backing up, goes into that space behind. And Caicedo's not a right back, switches off. And he's done very well at right back, but it's that defensive thing and that sort of instinct of where he's going to be, and Caicedo doesn't see him go, doesn't get there. And look, I'm not sure he means the finish.
Oh, behave. He so meant the finish.
What, bounced into the ground
yeah,
like that?
Old Mesut Ozil.
Oh, mate, look, all right then, let's give it to him. Let's give it to him. Let's say he meant it. But it was just that amazing hard work in how they're going to get out of the blocks. And the tactic from before the game is to say, when that ball breaks on the edge of the box, we're going to hit them high up. And that's because we start in with 5 at the back, which we'll come on to in a minute. And so those 2 midfielders from the start had the licence to go and commit themselves into those areas around the edge of the box. And look, a couple of minutes in and they're dancing.
Yeah, totally. I think what we will say about the finish, he meant to just get his foot over the ball and do what Bukayo Saka was unable to do in the second leg for Arsenal against PSG. And whether or not he meant to ping it over him just like that, I'm not so sure. But
only he knows.
His technique was spot on, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was very, very good. And the timing of the run was the reason he scored the goal.
Yeah, right. So, Dean, one of the other key elements of the game, the key moments even in the game, as I mentioned just now, was, of course, Nicolas Jackson's red card for an elbow on Sven Botman and Rob Him.
Yeah.
Talk to me.
Well, yeah, the red card was part of it because it got to a point where Jackson didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
He'd got to this point half an hour in where...
Definitely a red card.
Oh, 100% a red. Looks at him, knows he's there. And I actually think it's been played down a little bit. And fair play to Eddie Howe afterwards for sort of not dwelling on it and saying, I'm sure he didn't mean to elbow him. I don't know whether he meant to elbow him, but he meant to do him. Whether it's shoulder, arm, hand, whatever. He's just looking right at him. And, I'm ashamed to say I've done the same thing a few times. But anyway, it only happened because the Chelsea front line, including Jackson, were completely done by what Newcastle did at the start. So straight away, we'll show the graphic of this, that they didn't play their normal sort of 4-2-3-1 formation, which becomes a 4-4-2 in defence. They went Newcastle. They went 5 at the back. So I commented during the game of how it was what Man United want their formation to be. Everyone's talked about this Amorim 3-4-3 or 5-2-3 as it becomes in defence, and Newcastle just showed them how to play it. Yep. So they played those 3, the centre-backs in Botman, Cher and Byrne, and then Livramento and Murphy played as the full-backs. And I mean, Murphy, by the way, wow, what a season he's having in any position he gets picked in. And what that meant was, it said to Eddie Howe, when Chelsea attack, you've got 3 things, okay? You've got Enzo Fernandez, who Enzo Maresca gives the licence to go forward into the inside left position. You've got Cole Palmer, who is licensed to go into the inside right position, and they create that box midfield, which again we'll come back to in point 3. But then you've got Nicolas Jackson, who either holds up high line or comes in between to feet to come and get the ball. And we've done that in previous episodes.
Yeah, from Colwill, that direct pass.
That direct pass that comes in. So by playing the 3 centre-backs, the idea is that your full-backs mark the wingers. Yep. So Noni Madueke one side, and it was Neto the other side. So look, you've got them 1v1, and as we said, Newcastle not frightened to be 1v1. And then the 3 centre-backs, okay? So Byrne, you're allowed to go out and press Palmer. Go leave the defence and go right up. And we saw it 3 or 4 times. They went into the opposition half to press that space for Palmer. So Palmer is having the ball to feet 30 yards from his own goal with Dan Byrne flying in behind him. Yep. And then on the other side, Enzo Fernandez, it was then the middleman Cher going out and flying out into that position. And look, we've called it in episodes before, we've called it jumping out. Yeah. But I would normally refer to jumping out as when the ball's played, you go jumping out. It wasn't just when the ball's played. What Eddie Howe has got them to do is go and mark them in that position, because if you go out, you've still got a back 4. And so then, if the players switch to the other side, Botman would then come back into the back 5, and Dan Byrne would go out to Cole Palmer. So one is going out and one is staying in. So you've still got 4 at the back, and you're stopping that. And then with Nicolas Jackson, then Botman is going out and picking up Nicolas Jackson if he goes into that hole. And Chelsea couldn't work it out. What was going on? It was like Newcastle had 12 players. And sort of, again, I'll come back to Cole Palmer, but he's sort of looking around going, what's happening here, guys? It was brilliant for the first half an hour. And as I say, that enabled the midfield too to go and do their destroying jobs everywhere else.
Question then, Dino, when and where is the trigger for that? Because if there's fans watching this, perhaps not of Newcastle, who see how well or effectively they executed that plan. how on earth, you obviously can't have, for example, the two wider of the three centre-backs in the opposition half or pushing up all the time at the same time. Where are they looking?
It's when it's on their side of the field. Right. Yeah, when it's on their side of the field.
In Chelsea's defence?
Yes, in Chelsea's defence. So we see Colwill a lot, will put his foot on the ball, is the curse of centre-backs these days, and just stand and look for that ball into Enzo Fernandez. And that's then the trigger for the right-hand man to come out. Yep. If the ball gets switched across and it goes over to the other centre-back or right-back, and when Caicedo then is going to invert for Chelsea, then the left-hand man comes out. Right. So don't get me wrong, it's not easy. It's, it's decision-making of when to go, and it's brilliantly worked. It's fantastic planning, and it just meant for the first half an hour at least of this game, Chelsea could not get a foothold, because bear in mind that Isak is occupying the two centre-backs as well. Yep. So it feels to the other Chelsea players that they're a man down all over the field. So brilliant from Eddie Howe and brilliant from that back 3/back 5.
Right, you're talking about planning then, Dino. One other plan, that again came off very, very well indeed. You've spoken there about Chelsea's box midfield, which is sort of comes about by the fullbacks inverting, often Cucurella, maybe less so in this game. But again, Newcastle planned for it and they had an excellent way to counter it.
Yeah, and we know Chelsea are going to do this. It's no secret. I'm not revealing anything that most Chelsea fans and Premier League fans don't know, but Chelsea have been doing this all year.
That's the whole point of the show, mate.
They might have watched the show earlier in the year, but I've told this. Hopefully you have. But Chelsea form that box midfield. So either the right back goes in at the base of a box. So literally we're talking about a square in the middle of the field. And in this game, it was Caicedo going in to be the right-hand corner of the box.
As opposed to like a diamond people may also be used to.
Exactly right. So Lavia is the left base of the box. In possession, this is. Caicedo is the right base of the box, which means the other three form like a back three behind it. And then Enzo Fernandez is the top part of the box, one side, and Cole Palmer the other side, okay? And the idea is we've got players who are very press resistant. The ball can be fired into that box. You suck players into it, and then you play out into the space it's created. So Newcastle just broke it, brushed it, stamped all over it. And the way they did it was they've got their back five set up. So different to when we just talked about them jumping out. If Chelsea get possession on the halfway line, you can't do this and you can't jump out from defence anymore there. So they get into a back five at the back, and then they've got four midfield players in front, and then Isak up. So with those four midfield players in front, the way they broke the box is they basically put three in the middle of it, in a straight line. And it was amazing, because then watching Tonali and Bruno work in tandem was amazing, but also watching it was Harvey Barnes one side and Anthony Gordon the other do a job where if there's three in there, I'm not going to go. I'm going to pick somebody else up. The ball goes out the other side, so that means I've got to join and make the three in the box the other side. That was my next question.
So when the ball is over, so you had Gordon on the left yesterday, Barnes on the right for Newcastle. When the ball is with Chelsea, but towards Chelsea's right, i.e. Gordon's side of the pitch.
Gordon would be out with the ball.
He's not in the line.
No, he's not in the line. And Barnes comes in. Okay. So that's what that connection, amazing connection between players that Newcastle have got. And that's because it's been drilled hard on the training ground, week after week, day after day after day, back five together, and actually their back line is not always brilliant because they are committed to going out and pressing the ball, but they're not worried about playing offside because they defend so deep that then if it goes through, Pope's going to come out and collect it anyway.
Well, that's what you did before, I think, on a previous episode. Might have been around the League Cup final, where they leave a certain and very deliberate amount of space between the defence and the midfield. They're not like totally deep on their own penalty area, but nor are they Ange Postecoglou right up the backside of the midfield. It's extremely deliberate, and I wouldn't even call it a mid-block. I would call it a deep-lying defence, but the distances they have and the connections they have from left to right in a line and then from back to front in front of them is just absolutely amazing. And again, we saw sort of Cole Palmer. He was trying so hard, Cole Palmer, to get on the ball, get in spaces in between. But Newcastle are so well connected that I talk about being connected by bungee cords, and they're just going back and forth across the field, and there's nowhere to go in between them. And look, I was pretty disappointed that it took Maresca until half time to actually make a change, and obviously by then they're down to 10. Yeah, of course, yeah. So just quickly with that, Dino, is one of the benefits of that, we will move on very swiftly, but one of the benefits of that system there, and you've spoken about this before, managers where they kind of choose their compromise. So they know when they're positioning their players in certain positions, they're going to be weaker in certain areas. But it sounds to me like with that from Newcastle, that the only area they're weak, i.e. if the ball's over Chelsea's right, i.e. Newcastle's left, Barnes drops in, so naturally leaves a space, but you're relying on a really impressive, accurate switch from Chelsea to a wide player that they don't really have in order to exploit
in that
it.
scenario you've just described there is absolutely spot on. They didn't do this again in that way of defending. They didn't do this against Liverpool in the cup final because they've got to deal with Trent Alexander-Arnold.
Totally.
Because that's where if it goes into Trent Alexander-Arnold, he's either going to put a great ball into the box or he's going to switch play very quickly in that sense there. But against Chelsea, where you know that Casado's going to invert and Cucurella likes going up the outside, that danger isn't there.
There's no real wide threat.
So they've identified that Chelsea can have the ball in the sort of wide centre-back, inside right full-back positions, and they're not going to hurt us.
Yeah, do exactly that. Right, point 4. I think I'm learning from you. Anytime you're off there, I think I can stand in those shoes. Number 4, change that tune.
Yeah, and so I just sort of referred to that just a minute ago. So the second half was 2 managers who understood what each other were doing and reacted to each other. And it was like, I'll make a chess move and then you counterbalance it. Yeah. And, Eddie Howe wins it in the end because they score late. But Chelsea gave it a good old go in that second half. And, Nick Pope had to make a couple of very good saves in order to keep it. But, as I say, I was disappointed that Maresca took till half-time to do it. But what he did at half-time, so you talk about Cole Palmer playing as like a false 9 and then the movement up front. But he then abandoned the box shape. And then you've got to play, so you can't, you no longer have you got 4-4-2 or 4-5-1 because you're a man light. Yeah. So what he did is he moves, first of all, Palmer, and then when they counterbalanced it, Newcastle, so he started to make a line of 3. Instead of a box, they made a line of 3, which meant that they haven't really got a striker and Newcastle have got nobody to mark. So Newcastle have got a back 5. And so it's a bit like, hang on a minute, now Chelsea with 10 men are dominating the midfield area because Chelsea have gone, we're going to put, and I think it was Palmer and then the other 2 wide players. So he took Madueke off at half-time and then he forms this sort of 3 across the midfield. And then the Newcastle back 5 are like, hang on a minute, earlier on we were going out and now we're 5 players in a line with nobody to mark and we're getting outnumbered over there. So Eddie Howe, 4 at the back. Makes a change straight away. Goes to 4 at the back. Livramento at full back. I think he took Murphy off. And then they sort of, Newcastle went into a more of their natural 4-2-3-1 shape. And then just after that, they make another change, Chelsea, which maybe Maresca's thinking 2 moves ahead. What's Newcastle going to do next in this game of chess? And then what Chelsea then did is basically say to Casado, don't play right back anymore. And so they pushed the man right onto the right wing and then they allowed Casado to play in this sort of inside right channel where he's not really defending as a right back because Newcastle took Anthony Gordon off. That we don't have to worry as much about over that side. We're going to play up that inside right channel and then move Palmer over to the other side inside. And it was almost like then Casado for 8 or 10 minutes was playing as the right-hand striker. And bear in mind, he'd started at right-back. And he was pushing right up into the forward line. And Newcastle are going, hang on a minute, we've now got this situation where they've got 10 men, we've gone to 4 at the back, they're still outdoing us in midfield, Casado's playing 2 positions in 1. So then Eddie Howe makes another change and brings on Emil Kraft, brings on another right back, bolsters that midfield with Lewis Miley and goes into a 3 there, which means Bruno Guimarães can pick up Casado and stop him in his tracks there. And then from about 65 to 80 minutes or so, Chelsea didn't really get any joy because Newcastle just nullified it. And it was like, you blink, I'll change. I'll change, you blink. And it was great from the 2 managers. And Eddie Howe comes out on top.
For any Chelsea fans watching this going, oh, give us a break, mate. We did have 10 men for the majority of the game. Like, it was quite easy for Eddie Howe to do that. Is there any...
there is an absolute element of that. And I thought Chelsea were excellent at times. And there was a couple of occasions like when Cucurella broke down the left and you want him to really go, but they've got no striker in the box. So he looks up, sees no Nicolas Jackson. So what do you expect him to do? He's going to turn back and come inside. And of course that plays into Newcastle's hands. But they're 1-up Newcastle. So it wasn't like Newcastle had to come out and score. They were in control of the game. And as I keep saying on the show,
Chelsea,
you can be dominant without the ball as well as being dominant with it. And Newcastle were full value.
Right, final point, Dino. Cole Palmer broke his goalless duck recently, and it elicited some rare emotion from him and a bit of character in an interview, but he was off it this week.
It was a little bit, but I don't think it was his fault. And that's kind of my point, is that I'm getting really frustrated watching him because he's just... He does wear his emotion out. He's not holding it in, is he? He's like a stroppy teenager with his arms and his, and his facial expressions and everything. There's nothing wrong with that at all, because he really wants the ball. Yeah. He wants to impact the game. He knows he's their best player, so he wants it in areas to do it. But because of all these like tactical switches that go on, he becomes almost the one for me that is not being utilised well enough. Like Caicedo is very adaptable, right? So in that game, right back, centre midfield, right inside, right forward. Like Madueke moves one wing to the other. Neto the same. Lavia can either play as a 2 or a 1. But in all those things, the idea surely should be get Cole Palmer on the ball. Around the D of the penalty area. And because Newcastle did a very good job in squeezing him up, and we'll show his touch map, that he had loads of touches all over the place. So that shows his effort. He's trying to get on the ball. He's trying to find space everywhere. But most of those touches were 35, 40 yards from goal, which if he's going to shoot from there, you're backing your goalkeeper. And then the other side is there were loads of touches of his inside his own half, because Newcastle have done that thing where they forced him back in, and they've palmed him off. They've just basically said he's okay having the ball as long as he's facing that way and not coming at us and not shooting. And I just don't think that the Chelsea setup at the moment is playing into Cole Palmer's strengths. They're not taking him off, because of course you don't, but it's like you're expecting him to try and find his own way rather than setting up a tactical shape in order to get the best from it.